So, Leader Schumer, I'd like to ask you about the Speaker you say you want to sit down and work with, or the speakership itself, Speaker of the House. Given the promises that Kevin McCarthy gave to the House Republicans, what areas of improvement or being able to work together are there? What are you hoping that you can get done, especially given the fact that one member can motion to vacate and get them out at the drop of a hat if they don't like what they see?
Well, Mika, as I mentioned, what helped us win the Senate and deter the huge losses that were predicted in the House was actually getting things done. And in fact, of our 7 big bills that we passed this summer and earlier this year, which made this a historic Congress, 6 were bipartisan. There were good numbers of Republicans in the Senate who wanted to work with us on these issues, and we got enough votes. You needed 10 on just about every one, and we got more than that to get it done. Now, the House Republican Party is somewhat different than the Senate, but not that different. And the majority of the Republican members, they're not going to agree with us on a whole lot of things. Probably on this tax issue, they won't. But they're going to want to come to their senses. And so my prediction is there'll be ways we can work together. And, if a large number of the mainstream Republicans reject this MAGA fringe, Leader McCarthy will have no choice but to follow, because the very tools that the MAGAs can use now, the moderate, there are no moderates, but the mainstream Republicans can use as well. And so they put themselves in a very, very difficult position. McCarthy did it to become Speaker, but there's going to be pushback. There's inevitable pushback. You know why? People don't want to look at their own fates, as I said, like Thelma and Louise going over the cliff. They know if they follow this MAGA. Proposals to cut Medicare and Social Security, which is one of the things they're proposing. Let's see how, that's another lesson. George Bush tried that back in 2005, and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and I fought that tooth and nail, and we won. So I think there's going to be, as I said, not in the next couple of weeks, but if the Republican Party, first, if they're interested in working with us, we'll work with them, as we've shown we can. But second, if they don't, it's going to lead to their own detriment. And you could, what happened in 2022 could happen even to a greater extent in 2024. You can't be an extreme and win in America.
So, Mr. Majority Leader, you're talking about potential Republican extremism, voicing some hope that they'll turn away from that. But some in the House seem to be embracing it. And though I think the appetite for success, bipartisan success, maybe is hopeful but limited, some things have to get done. Government has to get funded. The debt ceiling has to be dealt with.
Right.
How concerned are you, considering some of the extreme rhetoric you're hearing from some in the House who are saying that should be a bargaining tool? We've heard the same from former President Trump. How concerned are you that, to use your Thelma and Louise analogy, that they might be willing to go off the cliff here?
Well, it can't be 20 of them steering the whole thing. And these 20 are at the extreme right wing, MAGA. They've said some really crazy things in the past. I don't think that'll happen. Look, to default on our debt is devastating. It's bills we've already paid. And look what's happened in the past. Under Joe Biden, we passed, you can only do this really in a bipartisan way. And we came to agreement with Leader McConnell that only Democrats would vote to raise the debt ceiling. We needed all 50 of us. We got them. And they would step aside but not stand in the way. Under Donald Trump, these Republicans, MAGA or otherwise, didn't say we're holding the debt ceiling hostage, and we passed raising the debt ceiling 3 times. The destruction that this would cause the average American family, let alone all the full faith and credit and interest rates going up and all of this other stuff, is huge. And I think as we get closer to it again, I'm an eternal optimist. I guess I wouldn't be in this business if I wasn't. But I think they'll come to their senses like they have the last 4 times, 3 under Trump and 1 under Biden.
Remains to be seen. It's interesting, isn't it, how the goalposts have moved, who you call moderates now.
Yeah,
the Republican Party is still people who helped stage an attempted coup against the government, but that's an issue for another day.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about immigration. The president was at the border. He was down in El Paso on Sunday. This is an issue now that not just Republicans, but Democrats, the mayor of El Paso, humanitarian groups say we are overwhelmed. This is, of course, a crisis. Something has to give here. Do you see legislation coming in this new Congress around immigration to help stop what's happening?
Okay, well, at the end of our session just in December, Senators Sinema and Tillis tried to put together a proposal that would have bipartisan support and deal with the problems at the border. They didn't quite get there, but yesterday, this was an encouraging moment. 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans went to the border to just check out what's happening. And look, I've encouraged both the Democrats and Republicans in the Senate to try and see if we can come up with some kind of bipartisan solution. Ultimately, at least from my experience, and I was involved in immigration. I've been on, since 1986 when we worked with President Reagan on Simpson-Mazzoli. Comprehensive immigration reform is really ultimately the only way you get things done. It's ironic. Having a larger solution is easier to get done sometimes than a smaller solution, and that is because when people are all included, it worked. The bill in 2013, which the Gang of Eight put together, led by John McCain and myself, had the support of business, had the support of labor, had the support of all the religious groups, from the Liberal Council on Churches to the Conservative Southern Baptist Convention. It had everybody. And I am, I encourage efforts to deal with the border issue bipartisan, but ultimately, I hope we can get. It's a long, hard road up, but it's something I believe in passionately, comprehensive immigration
Do you
reform.
agree the problem right now is acute, as a lot of Democrats are now saying as well?
Well, it's a serious problem, and the only solution will be a bipartisan solution, and I've encouraged the group to try and come up with something. From what I'm told, they had very good meeting at the border, not only seeing what's going on, but wanting to work with each other.
So, Senator, I think there are a lot of people that are watching this show and that watch this network, and they're hoping that you can provide a counterbalance to some of the radicalism in the House over the next 2 years. I'm going to ask this question as a conservative, a guy that, we've worked together in the House, we've known each other forever. I'm a conservative guy, right?
Conservative Red Sox fan. I know you well. Yeah.
There are a lot of people like me that have been driven away from the Republican Party, and we are fearful of the next 2 years. So let me tell you how some conservatives that I know who used to vote Republican are fearful of the next 2 years and want to know what you and what the Senate can do to protect the institutions that keep Americans safe.
Right.
Like we've already talked about the attack of the IRS from Republicans saying that they're going to gun down and kill small business owners. It's a total lie.
Of course it is.
But people that were instrumental in helping Kevin McCarthy become Speaker of the House have been pounding the FBI and have been talking about defunding the FBI, defunding intel agencies, when these are the agencies that push back against Chinese espionage, against Russian espionage, against our enemies' espionage. And the same with the U.S. military. You have Republican colleagues in the U.S. Senate that have talked about how the U.S. military is weak, how they wish they were more like Russia's military. You have the most watched people on cable news talking about how U.S. military helicopters used in Afghanistan are going to attack Trump supporters. They attack the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I talk about all this because, yes, it's radical. And yes, we know they're going to lose 2024 if they continue this radical, anti-American approach, attacking our men and women in the military, our men and women in intel. What I want to know is a conservative who's scared of these people, who attack our military and our FBI professionals. What can you guys do? What can you senators do to protect America from the extremists that put Kevin McCarthy in power, so they don't slash the military budget, so they don't attack the FBI, so they don't defund the FBI? What can you guys do?
Well, we certainly aren't going to let them defund the FBI. And given that we have the majority in the Senate and I have the ability to put bills on the floor, we're going to defend that. We're going to make sure that they can't do that. Many of their radical things will be stopped in the Senate because we have a Democratic majority. But I'd go a little further, Joe. I think you answered your own question in a certain sense. The American people proved in this last election, and it made me joyous, really, that they were going to reject this kind of extremism. And all these crazy people who ran for the secretaries of state and all these other offices lost, even in reddish states. And I think that as our mainstream Republicans, there are no moderates anymore, but the non-MAGA ones, go home, they're going to talk to people who say the following, just sort of what you said. I was a Bush Republican. I'm a Reagan Republican. I can't live with this Republican Party. Don't let it go this way. And democracy, as you know, we've talked about this over the decades, is a slow but very, very strong force. The roots of this democracy are deep. And I think that's what the election showed. Despite all the harsh rhetoric and all some of the, you go to Twitter and you go to these places and some of your rival networks and you hear all this stuff. It won't sink in. They have an innate sense, the average voter who doesn't follow things as carefully as we do, but has an innate sense when things go too far, one way or the other. And I think they will push it back, and I think the pushback will actually occur, as I was mentioning before the election, because it's just how it is. And so your type of conservative who loves our democracy and is willing to fight for it is going to be one of the antidotes we have here, as well as Democrats standing up and not letting do these things. But there's the other side to it, too. We Democrats have to show average folks who are not, they don't have to be people who agree with us on everything, that we want to get some things done, like we did last time for veterans, for guns and things. And we did have Republicans join us. I'm going to work as hard as I can, as I did the last 2 years, to get them to join us again. And if we can do that in the Senate, I think it's going to also send a message to the mainstream Republicans in the House. Join us. Don't stick with this MAGA wing. It's bad for America and bad for your own future.